When I first came to Grace Church in 2004, I'd never heard of recovery ministry. I had no idea what that meant. And the best explanation that was given to me was that it's like an onion, and that you have to come to terms with some aspect of your behavior, but you've got to look behind it, sort of peel back and sort of see what's causing it, or find other behaviors that are buried there. And it's hard work, but it's worth it. My name is Linda, and I'm peeling that large, messy onion in my life of anger, anxiety, perfectionism, insecurity, inferiority, codependency, control freak, approval addict, and food addict. It stinks, makes me crazy, makes me cry, but peeling it is adding flavor to my life. So now I'm going to pray, because that's about the only thing I can do. Lord, please guide my heart and my words. Tonight, I claim James 4:10. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. Amen. I was born September 24th, 1960 in Flint, Michigan. I'm the middle child of 5 daughters. My parents were happily married up until my dad's death just before their 57th wedding anniversary, which was 5 years ago, and frankly, my mother is still happily married to him. If you looked at our family from the outside, we looked like a TV sitcom. My dad went to work every day. He supported the family. My mom stayed at home. She took care of the family. We went to church every Sunday. My parents sang in the choir. My dad taught Sunday school. And here's the thing. We looked like that TV sitcom from the inside, too. I lived in a home that was full of love and laughter and support. My mom went to work when my youngest sister went to kindergarten because my parents had a dream to send all 5 daughters to college, and they did. I come from an extraordinary family, and ironically, that's been part of my struggle. It's hard to admit you have a problem when you look back and realize that you have an upbringing that most people would envy, that you have a parents that most people would pay millions of dollars to have. But I had to push into determining what was wrong with me so I could find what is right within me. I first attended CR in 2009. I was on the staff here at Grace Church, and I was in conflict with myself, some of my colleagues, and my supervisor. So after a Come to Jesus meeting, Pastor West told me that I had to come to terms with some demons and figure out how to get my act together, and I needed to develop a recovery plan. And I said, okay. I had no idea what that meant, but I said, okay. So I came to CR, because that's what you do. I sat over there, about halfway back on that aisle. And during the first song, I would sneak in, and during the last song, I would sneak out. And I never spoke to anyone, and I never made eye contact with anyone, and I couldn't, or rather I wouldn't, relate to anyone. I just wanted to check off those boxes so I could tell my supervisors I was doing what I was told. Now, this is going to shock you, but it didn't work. In March of 2010, I signed up for a step study. Now, not because I needed it, but because it would appear that I was following the directive to get better. Now, mind you, that's not what I was told. That's what I heard. I have a habit of creating reality in my own head. So I approached the process with trepidation or terror, because at the time I was the director of children's ministry, and I was really terrified that I would see parents and that they would think something was wrong with me, or that I was broken, or that I was untrustworthy. So at that first meeting, there were about 24 women there. And I walked in, and it was such relief to see that I didn't know anybody there except the facilitator, who was a trusted friend of mine. And over time, that number was cut in half. And we spent the next 13 months together. And it was easy, and all was well, and I was cured. Okay, So as I mentioned, I'm the middle child. I have 2 older sisters and 2 younger sisters. I cannot remember one instance of being compared to them, not by my parents, grandparents, family, friends, not even my sisters compared me to my sisters. I remember a teacher would say, "Oh, hi, I'm so glad you're in my class because I've had your sisters." And I would think, oh no. See, I'm not as smart as they are. I'm not as good a student as they are. I'm not as dedicated as they are. And boy, are you going to be disappointed. I created this reality that I didn't measure up. So much so that to this day, I can still tell you where I don't measure up to my sisters. I can tell you what I can't do that they can do. I can tell you where they've been successful and I have not. I even remember the day when my daughter said to me, "Because you were the dumb one, right, Mom? Compared to your sisters?" Do you know where she learned that? From me. In my teens, I rebelled. While other kids were acting out with drugs and alcohol and sex, I joined the drama club. I could stand in front of an audience and I can sing, I can act, I can talk. I'm very comfortable doing that, but I ached to be noticed. I ached for approval. I ached for affirmation, and I ached to be special. I continued that on in college, and I majored in theater. And after my first acting class, we each had one-on-one meetings with the professor, and she said to me, "You know, you're good, even talented, but you'll never make it in this business because you don't have the right look." And at that, my acting career was over, and the inner dialogue of not good enough kicked up into high gear. But I didn't want to admit defeat, so I slowly transitioned into backstage, and I learned stage design and lighting design and sound. And I decided I would become a stage manager. Now, if you go to an orchestra, the conductor is the one who just makes everything happen with the orchestra. That's what a stage manager does. The stage manager is in control. Control. It sounds so good, you know. Take control, quality control, self-control, remote control. I was more like General Patton control. The shows always went exactly as they were supposed to. The performances were perfect. Perfection. What could be so bad about control and perfection? Now, when things didn't go well, I might get irritated or exasperated or irrational or explosive, but I didn't care because I was in control. And the shows were perfect, and I got credit. After college, I accepted a position as an intern at a small theater in New Jersey, and then I moved on to New York City to try my luck in the big time. But New York was not a healthy place for me. It taught me things I did not need to know. It was at that time an angry place, and standing up for yourself at all costs was a badge of honor. Winning the argument mattered. Shouting down your opponent mattered. Standing your ground mattered. Ask any New Yorker. I developed a hardened heart and a thick skin. My vocabulary grew to all the 4-letter words, a few 5-letter words, the ever-popular hyphenated comeback phrase, and when words were not enough, I developed my hand signals. But I was successful, and certainly no one could take that away from me, and no one could compare me to my sisters. Remember that comparison that wasn't happening except in my head? I had control over the story I presented to my friends and family back home, creating a reality of success and happiness and perfection. In 1988, I met David. We moved to Florida in 1990 and got married in July of that year. We had our first child, Lindsay, in 1992. And motherhood brought out the worst in me. All of my control issues soared as I tried to will my baby to sleep when she was supposed to, and eat when she was supposed to, and develop as she was supposed to, and I could be the perfect mother. I needed credit and appreciation for every advancement, and let me say how grateful you all are that Facebook did not exist at that time. In 1994, our second child, Caitlin, arrived. Unfortunately, I suffered debilitating postpartum depression. This was another nail in the coffin of my self-worth. I no longer had my career. I was often alone with my girls and all my friends were working in the entertainment industry, and perfection was nowhere in sight. So I sunk deeper into depression, and I medicated with food. Dave and I had a lot of stress and conflict, but the one thing we agreed on was that I was not emotionally able to have any more children. Now, since I had carried those babies, and I had delivered those babies, it seemed fair to me that he should do something about that. And so I demanded that he get a vasectomy. And it was the least he could do. He took one for the team, and 6 months later, I was pregnant. Oh, sure, it's funny to you. Here's the thing. For those of you who know him, Sammy is the easiest baby ever and a great, great gift to our family. However, I didn't know that at first, and I fell completely apart. I was under a psychiatrist's care and on medication. And talk about angry. The world was against me. I worked so hard to keep my misery away from our children, but I did not hide it from my husband. And I'm not sure how we survived. How I resented that I was stunk at home, that I had gained all this weight, that I was out of shape and isolated from the world. Now, I had one friend in the neighborhood who had 3 children the same age, and so we would get together and the kids would play, and I would sit on the kitchen floor and whine about how horrible my life was. And finally she turned to me and she said, "Linda, don't you think you should go back to church?" Here's the thing, as I told you, I'd grown up in the church, but you know, at 16, I decided that I didn't need the church anymore because in all my great wisdom, I did not need that kind of guidance. So 20 years later, I went back and I started attending First United Methodist Church in Kissimmee. I assume many of you were not initially drawn here to reconnect with God. I think many of you are here because you needed a meeting, and this one just happened to be in a church. Well, that's my story too. I didn't go to reconnect with Jesus. I went to reconnect with people. Any people. Just someone over the age of 5. So I got active, and I joined a women's Bible study, and then I started volunteering in the children's ministry so I could make friends. And one of those friends was Jesus. But honestly, it was a pretty one-sided relationship because I was in it. In the summer of 1999, the children's director at that church resigned, and I applied for the job. I knew that I could learn it on the job. I knew that I was creative and organized, and I knew that I could get things done. And I did, as long as I could control everything. And it was perfect. And I got credit, and appreciation, and affirmation, and no one got in my way. The ministry grew, as did my influence, until the personnel board of that church fired a friend of mine. And then I made sure they knew I wasn't happy. I made sure everybody knew I wasn't happy. I was critical and sarcastic and confrontational, and I started looking for another job because, frankly, they didn't deserve me anymore. And in March of 2004, I applied here at Grace Church, and in April of 2004, First Church Kissimmee asked for my resignation. In May, I was offered the job here, with full disclosure of my resignation, except for the part that was my fault. And on June 1st, 2004, I started on the staff. And for the next 4 years, you know, things here went pretty well. David connected with the music ministry and missions. Our kids connected with children's ministry and the youth ministry. I joined a Tuesday night small group, my rock group. We've been together for 12 years. We've been doing life together. Grace Church continued to grow and add campuses and develop new ministries and programming within ministries, and all I wanted to do was control it and make it perfect and get credit and affirmation and appreciation, and the job got bigger and the pressures grew and I started to crack, and conflict and resentment and anger multiplied. Here at work, at home, just everywhere. And I ended up in a Come to Jesus meeting with instruction to develop a recovery plan. And I started at CR, and I joined a step study, and I tried so hard. And right around the time we were dancing around steps 4 and 5, Grace Church asked for my resignation. And the ground began to collapse under me because it was all happening again. And the only thing I know I did right was that I stayed in that step study. Because I was going to finish and prove to them how wrong they were for letting me go. Because that, my friends, is pure motivation. I received my chip April 1st, 2011, April Fool's Day. Once I finished this step study, I drifted from CR, which I think is pretty common. I talked to my sponsor occasionally, met with my stepsisters every 6 months or so, and convinced myself that I had recovered and that I was a new creation. When I talked about the split with Grace, I spoke my part. I told people that I had learned from the experience and that I had grown. And those things were true, and I was better, but resentments were harbored deep inside of me. And as long as there were potato chips and ice cream available, I could medicate and keep that all to myself. From the outside, I was a recovery success story. Appearing emotionally healthy, but clearly not physically healthy, seems my onion had added a layer of fat. In 2012, I was offered a full-time job at a church in Fort Myers. It was like redemption in big capital letters. Again, I would show Grace Church they were wrong for letting me go. They should have held on until I was completed my steps and was completely healed. I would make them regret their decisions and continue to be the poster child for successful recovery. And my progress began to slip, and my humility faded, and self-righteousness grew in my spirit. I started that job July 15th, 2012, and I will only tell you a few things. I went to my sponsor and told her about the job offer, and she said, "The church atmosphere on staff is not healthy for you. Don't take this job." And I said, "You don't understand," and I took it anyway. I didn't attend CR for the entire 3 years that I worked at that church. I then rarely talked to my sponsor because, after all, she had not been supportive of my triumphant return to ministry. I completely lost touch with the women in my step study. I worked to have control and make it perfect and get credit and affirmation and appreciation. And on May 15th, 2015, I was fired. If you don't hear anything else tonight, please hear this. It works if you work it, but it doesn't if you don't. It works if you work it, but it doesn't if you don't. I thought I'd hit rock bottom 5 years before, but here I was in that pit again. I had to go back to the beginning. Step 1. And oh, I did not want to be powerless. So we returned to Grace, not on the staff, obviously, but in the congregation. And I debriefed with my sponsor and my faithful small group on Tuesday night, and Pastor George, and Pastor Sherry. And I was wounded. But I'd crawled out of that pit, and I knew that I could do it again. But it would require me to be brutally honest with myself, to truly own my part, to humbly forgive not only those who I felt had wronged me, but myself. It was really rocky for several months. But I was determined to work one layer of the onion and to take care of my body and to stop medicating with food. So when I find myself staring into the refrigerator, I ask myself, why are you here and what do you want? And the answer is never, I need nourishment or I'm hungry. It was a start. And frankly, it was easier than dealing with what was at the core of that onion. Slowly, Dave and I began to heal and serve where we felt most comfortable, which is in the music ministry. The desire for attention was a constant gnaw at my ego, and I discovered some of this recovery stuff worked here too. That same question, why are you here and what do you want? And fortunately, I could at least be honest with myself and say, I just want some attention. But a spirit would always whisper to me, Linda, you are here for Jesus. We are so grateful for Grace Church, surrounded by friends who have known us for more than 12 years, who love us and who could remind us that I'm not where I was in 2009. Now, last summer, I was asked to sing on a Friday night to substitute for a singer. I hadn't been here in 5 years. And when we finished the first set and I went down and sat in the congregation and I realized that lesson was resonating with me. There's something very special about being here, and I can't really explain it. My first step study had indeed done a work in me in spite of myself. There are lessons buried deep in my heart and mind that were resurfacing, and I hadn't lost nearly as much ground as I had feared. I had created a reality of failure and irreparable brokenness that were lies. And now I recognize them for what they are: decoys to keep me sick. I want to be well and whole and healthy, and I want to be closer to Jesus. And I want to share my story, my experience, strength, and hope. I want to help folks struggling with their addictions and their compulsions, but I really want to help normal people too. You know, those of you who grew up in the Americana like I did, those of you who never touched a drink or a drug, Jesus can save you too. Jesus can save you from normal. So who am I now? And how am I new? Well, I attend and serve here every Friday night. I'm in my second step study. I meet with my sponsor every Tuesday morning. I am now a sponsor myself, so pray for her. I work in a doctor's office at the front desk, and I'm not in charge of anyone or anything, and that's okay. I want to be content. I want peace. I want to love people, all people. John 13:34-35 says, "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another, and by this everyone will know you are my disciples, if you love one another." I no longer need to be right. I'm learning to have a conversation, listen to different opinions, and not have to fight about it. I can disagree with you and not tell you. It's not my responsibility to tell you if you're right or wrong. It's not my responsibility to determine if you're right or wrong. And you would not believe what that does for anger. Listen, I still have my moments, but I've developed tools to help me control when and how to express anger. I'm good at venting in the car with the music really loud, or at home, where David still gets caught in the crossfire, and I'm way behind on my daily amends to him. I've come to the realization that this body was given to me in order to house a soul and a spirit to shine light. For as long as I'm on the earth, and as there seems to be a continuing need for that light, I need to stick around for a while, so I take care of my body, living with the knowledge that I am powerless over my compulsion to overeat, but God is not. I live in community with my small group on Tuesday nights, with our couples group that meets once a month, and with the band that I sing with here on Friday night and on Sunday morning and out at the shores. And friends that I choose to live life with, some in recovery, some not. So I'll close by sharing this scripture that was life-changing for me. It's from the book of Job, chapter 33, verses 26-28. I'll sing God's praises to everyone I meet, testifying, I messed up my life. And let me tell you, it wasn't worth it. But God stepped in and saved me from certain death, and I'm alive again. Once more, I see the light. I'm powerless. I'm not in control. Thank you. I'm not perfect. But I'm overwhelmed with gratitude that I have a God that's worth praising, that he's forgiven me countless times and he will continue to do so. Music continues to be a vital part of healing and worship and connection to God. And so I asked for the privilege tonight to end my testimony with worship, because that's what I do, and that's what's important to me. So there are days when I know who I am. There are days when I claim it even in my doubt. But I know that I am his, and I know that he is mine. So in hope and with joy, will you stand and worship with us? I know who I am. I know who I am. I know who I am. I am yours. I am yours. I know who I am. I know who I am. I know who I am. I am yours. I am yours. And you are mine. Jesus, you are mine. You are mine. Jesus, you are mine. Now listen. I was running, but you found me. I was blinded, and you gave me sight. You put a song of praise in me. Oh, I was broken, and you healed me. I was dying, and you gave me life. Lord, you are my identity. I know